Hello, everyone. This is the July 9th, 2019 edition of the From the Bench podcast. I'm Mark Janish, your host, welcoming all of you listening on Spotify, Libsyn, and Stitcher Radio. This is a MLB-heavy podcast. We're going to go over some MLB numbers, statistics, and some impressions and standings and where everyone is at as far as the league goes, the National League and the American League. Get ready tonight for the All-Star Game at Progressive Field in Cleveland. Once again, this is Access Media Global.com's flagship podcast program. You can find any of my postings or any information that I would usually post, whether it be a podcast or a blog post, at accessmediaglobal.com. So join me there if you have any questions. Also on Twitter, Mark at Access Media Global. You're welcome to get me there as well. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. This is the July 9th edition, 2019, of the From the Bench podcast. Once again, I'm the host and founder of AccessMediaGlobal.com. Wanting to go over some things with you regarding some MLB statistics. Want to go ahead and touch on those. I want to go to the standings first of all. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Let me go ahead and backtrack out of this. Let's get to the standings here in just a moment. I want to say congratulations to Coco Gauff. Despite the fact that she did lose to Simona Halep, a great run by her. Congratulations. And also today, if you haven't heard, 97th win for Serena Williams. She actually is going to be going to her 11th Wimbledon final. So good luck to Serena Williams as she progresses at the fortnight at Wimbledon. We're going to go ahead and go over some standings right now. We're just going to go over every division. Right now, at the mythical halfway point of the season, 90 games in, 57-33. Houston is 7.5 games up on the Oakland Athletics. Texas is behind Houston. This is in the American League West. 48-42, 6 games over 500. 9 games behind the front-running Astros. Los Angeles, tough loss with Tyler Skaggs and also Nick Adenhart in 2009 in an auto accident. Not an audio accident, but an auto accident. The Angels, 45-46, have lost 2 in a row, 4 out of 6 in their last 10, 45-46. And then, of course, the hapless Seattle Mariners, who Jerry Dipoto has said, general manager, that they're going to be in a rebuilding mode for the next 2 years. The Mariners started out 13-2. And now they are last in the American League West, 20 games behind the front-running Astros at 39-55. The East, this has been an interesting race only because the New York Yankees have had so many injuries, so many guys on the disabled list. I can't believe it's almost unfathomable, I should say, for the Yankees with the injuries they've had. They're actually 26 games over 500. Could we give them a cheer? Not a Bronx cheer, but a cheer nonetheless. 57-31, 648 winning percentage. Lost 2 in a row, but are 7 out of their last 10 winners. Followed by the Tampa Bay Rays, getting some great pitching. They have some young hitters. 52-39, 6.5 games behind the Yankees. Boston Red Sox Nation, 8 games over 500, but 9 games out. They got off to a terrible start at the beginning of the season, have not necessarily recovered in a very tough American League East. Followed by Toronto with Vladimir Guerrero doing a lot of damage in the home run derby. Looking forward to seeing that on the DVR basis here shortly. 34-57, 24.5 games out. And then, of course, the Baltimore Orioles minus Manny Machado, not doing well at all. 27 wins, 62 losses at this stage. Headed toward a 100-loss season, very, very simply. 30.5 games out. The American League Central, Usually at this time we'd see the front-running Cleveland Indians, but right now the home run hitting Minnesota Twins, Max Kepler, among others, doing a lot of damage as far as home runs go as a team. Minnesota running away with this division, 23 games over 500, 4 out of their last 10 winners. They lost their last game, 56-33, 23 games over 500, 629 winning percentage, followed by Francisco Lindor and Carlos Santana, Cleveland. 12 games above 500, 5.5 games out in the American League Central. The White Sox follow that up, 12.5 games out, a couple games under 500 at 42 and 44. The Kansas City Royals, 27 games out, small market team, has lost 2 in a row, and 8 of the last 10, 30 wins, 61 losses. And then, not to belabor the point, but Detroit is headed for a 100-loss season. 28 wins, 57 losses, 26 games behind the front-running Minnesota Twins. So it looks like the Twins are probably going to run away with that division unless Cleveland's pitching improves and catches fire. In the National League, to be honest with you, was looking for more from Philadelphia and the New York Mets, but we'll get to them in a moment. Ronald Acuna Jr. are going to be in the starting lineup for the National League tonight. 54 wins, 37 losses. Brian Snitker doing a great job in Atlanta. 54 and 37, followed by the Washington Nationals and the amazing Max Scherzer. He just seems to be getting better with time, a la Justin Verlander, 36 years old, still doing a lot of damage for the Houston Astros and, of course, the Washington Nationals with Max Scherzer. Although the only thing with Max and Verlander that I can see is they have a tendency to be around the plate, so they're going to give up some home run balls. We just hope that there's not too many people on when those home run balls are given up. Atlanta 54 and 37 out of the National League East, followed by the Nationals 5 games over in the post Bryce Harper, 6 games ahead, 6 games back of Atlanta at the break. 8 out of 10. They won 2 in a row. Philadelphia not getting the pitching that they had hoped for. 47 and 43, just above 500, 6.5 games behind the Atlanta Braves. Still in a good position for the for a wild card, which we will get to. Followed by the hapless New York Mets, and not necessarily happy with the New York pitching, and also who's that? Mickey Callaway getting in trouble with writers and these other things. So as we move forward here, we have Miami trailing the Mets and the division, 19.5 games out. The hapless Mets are 13.5 games out, have only won 3 of their last 10. And then, of course, the Miami Marlins bringing up the rear in that division, 19.5 games out with a record of 33 and 55. This is going to be an interesting race in the National League Central. The Cubs fly the W. Cubs 47 and 43, just a half game behind in front of Milwaukee. Excuse me. Despite the fact that Christian Yelich will be in the All-Star game, has had a stellar year. We find Milwaukee at 47 and 44, a half game behind the Chicago Cubs. St. Louis playing 500 ball. Excuse me. St. Louis playing 500 ball at 44 and 44, 2 games out. Pittsburgh with Josh Bell and Chris Archer, 44 and 45, 1 game under 500, 2.5 games out of first place. And then, of course, the ever-improving, don't sleep on these guys, Cincinnati Reds, only 4.5 games out, bringing up the rear in the Central Division of the National League. So there's 4.5 games separating 5 teams in the National League Central. So good luck on that. I'm hoping Milwaukee will get a little bit better pitching. I was expecting Milwaukee to run away with this, but then again, of course, with Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo in Chicago, the Cubs appear to be hanging around a half game ahead of the Milwaukee Brewers. In the National League West, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Dodgers here in a little bit, but they're 60 wins and 32 losses. They've lost 3 in a row. They lost a series to the Padres. Then, of course, 13 and a half games behind the front-running 60 and 32 Dodgers in the National League West. The Arizona Diamondbacks, 1 game over 500, 3 in a row, followed by San Diego. I have to say, San Diego has been doing great with the young pitchers, including Chris Paddock and that whole crew. San Diego doing a great job. 45 and 45, 14 games behind the Dodgers. But that's not San Diego's fault. San Diego has a lot of upside, so good for Padre fans across Southern California and into their fan base area. Colorado got off to a really slow start. They're 1 game under 500, 14 and a half games out. They've lost 6 in a row, however. And then, of course, San Francisco, 41 and 48, 17 and a half games behind the front-running Dodgers with 2 wins in a row. I would expect Madison Bumgarner trade rumors to heat up before the deadline. The deadline being July 31st, trade deadline. Let's go to the National League wild card standings here in just a moment. Let's start with the American League. Of course, we've already gone over the leaders of the divisions. The top 2 teams are going to play 1 postseason game in a 1-game playoff to see who advances. We have New York in the East, Minnesota in the Central, and Houston in the West. But right now, Cleveland is ahead by a half game over Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's had a great season, as I said earlier. That's followed by Oakland, only a game and a half out of the wild card spot, and Boston 2 games out. Texas is 3 games out, but I could see Tampa Bay or Cleveland hanging on to those 2 slots. I also could probably see Oakland squeezing in there. I'm not sure with Boston's lack of pitching right now that they'll be able to make up that deficit, but who knows? So right now, if the playoffs were to start today, Tampa Bay and Cleveland would qualify for the playoffs. But, of course, we still have about 72 games to go with about 90, 91 played per team. Let me go ahead and move to the National League. The leaders in the National League include Atlanta, the Cubs by the half game that I mentioned. The Los Angeles Dodgers trying to qualify for a 3rd straight World Series. The Cubs, Atlanta, and the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Braves leading the divisions. Right now, despite the fact that Philadelphia is not getting the pitching necessary right now, which I just touched on in a conversation I had earlier today with a friend on that, big Philly fan. 47 and 43 right now. The Philadelphia Phillies, despite their problems, lead the National League wild card race, followed by the Washington Nationals. Actually, that's true. Philadelphia and the Washington Nationals. You have the Milwaukee Brewers and Christian Yelich's crew. And then you have Arizona out by a game and a half. The aforementioned San Diego Padres are doing a great job. They're 2 games out of a wild card. St. Louis, 500 at 44 and 44. They're 2 games out of wild card. Colorado, 2.5 games out of wild card. Pittsburgh with the Josh Bell craziness going on as far as Josh Bell having a great year. 44 and 45, 2.5 games out. Cincinnati is 4.5 games out, and then on from there. So I could definitely see Milwaukee, Arizona, And if San Diego can get continual clutch hitting from their youngsters like Fernando Tatis Jr. and others, and pitching from Chris Paddock and that crew, we will see. But right now, if the playoffs began today, which they don't, we would definitely see the Philadelphia Phillies and the Washington Nationals in a one-game playoff in that circumstance. So right now, let me go ahead and just continue to talk about the league. I don't know that the league is in great shape necessarily, because the average fan is about 53 to 55 years old, and I know that I've been following baseball since I was for the last 43 years. I'm getting into my mid-50s now, close to that anyway. So the average fan for baseball is not getting any younger, is what I'm trying to say. I understand that the new generation of millennials and so on does not have time to sit around and watch a game for 3 hours plus. Rob Manfred has tried his best to speed up the game with less mound visits. I think you get a maximum of 6 per game, and then you lose that opportunity. Of course, the instant replay has made a difference as far as you see less manager-umpire confrontations. I kind of miss those in a way. Always good to see Lou Piniella throw a tantrum and a base now and then for the Seattle Mariners from time to time. So wanted to go ahead and get that out the way. Let me go ahead and do some statistical stuff with you. Right now, the average, highest average would be McNeil, 349 for the New York Mets. Christian Yelich leading in home runs, 31. Josh Bell, who will be in the All-Star game at the DH position tonight in Cleveland, he has 84 runs batted in. And I believe this is Alberto Mondesi, son of Raul Mondesi, former Dodger outfielder. He has 28 stolen bases for the Royals. Mookie Betts leading in runs scored for 77. Michael Nelson Trout with on-base percentage at 453. Slugging percentage is led by Christian Yelich, who's having an excellent year. On-base plus slugging is 1,140 for Mr. Yelich. As far as hits, Merrifield has 117 hits for the Royals. Josh Bell, once again, you see his name. He has 30 doubles on the season. Alberto Mondesi running around Royals Stadium, 9 triples. Mike Trout leading in base on balls, 76 for the league right now. So you see Christian Yelich's name, Whit Merrifield, Josh Bell, of course, doing a lot of damage. He's probably going to get some serious MVP votes. Let's look at some pitching right now. Hyun-Jin Ryu, 1.73 earned run average. Two folks are tied with 11 wins. The strikeout situation has Max Scherzer of the Washington Nationals leading with 181 strikeouts. Yates for the Padres with 30 saves. Justin Verlander, walk, hits, whip. Walks, hits, and innings pitched, 0.81. Batting average against, once again, Justin Verlander, who will be starting tonight's All-Star game for the American League. He has a 168 batting average against. The Indians' Trevor Bauer leads in innings pitched right now with 132, and 3 are tied with incomplete games with 3. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up the MLB portion of this podcast. If you want to continue to support the From the Bench podcast, you can go to accessmediaglobal.com and you can click on the icons there, the links to PayPal, You can use your credit or debit card. If you'd like to support the podcast does cost money. Airtime is not cheap. And I'd like to see this podcast continue. And if you'd like to see this podcast continue, you find some benefit, you're listening on Stitcher, Spotify, or you enjoy the variations of information that we have from international sports to local sports to the big four in the United States, MLB, NFL, NBA coverage, NHL coverage that we provide here at accessmediaglobal.com. I certainly would love and appreciate your support. So if you'd like to support the podcast, you can certainly do that. Any amount will help. The expenses for this podcast are about $20 a month. You can listen on the Stitcher platform. You can listen on the Libsyn platform. And, of course, I've already mentioned Spotify. So welcome to those of you listening on those platforms. AccessMediaGlobal.com would like to do more, but unfortunately, we don't have the human resources that we would need right now to expand our coverage, but that's a hope for later on down the line. Want to say congratulations to the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team. Jill Ellis, along with Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, and 24-year-old Rose Lavelle scoring a third goal. A 2-0 win on Sunday, winning the Women's World Cup. Now, the only problem that I really had with the broadcast at that point was the over-politicization of the game as far as equal pay, the gender pay gap, et cetera, et cetera. I kind of felt like there was a little too much noise, a little too much emphasis, a little too much preachiness about that. I'm not saying that the gender gap is not there. I'm not saying that women don't deserve equal pay. Matter of fact, the problem with that is that the women right now, the U.S. Women's National Team under Jill Ellis, is eons better, light years better than the men's national team, who lost the CONCACAF Gold Cup. I was actually able to see that game live on the television from Soldier Field, Mexico. Team Mexico beat the United States, thus cementing the United States in not a great position right now. If you're having issues with the gender pay gap, the men should be getting more money. The fact is the women are doing better than the men. So I could see where they would want to leverage their position of greatness right now and make sure that the sponsorship money and all the prize money for winning tournament after tournament will be happening. Now, one note for you, the Los Angeles Times reporting a couple days ago read this: August the 3rd, the United States women's team are going to be doing a victory tour. The victory tour, they're going to be playing some exhibition games, some friendlies. August 3rd, hopefully at the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl needs to be the place. You know, the Rose Bowl hosted the World Cup in 1994. It would be great to see the U.S. women's national team play an exhibition game. I believe that August 3rd, if they can work things out at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, you might be able to look for that. And also all the other locations across the United States where the victorious U.S. women's national team will be playing exhibition games, friendlies, and basically doing the victory tour, the victory lap, so to speak. So we will see. We will also see what happens with the gender pay gap, if some of this media promotion that's a little bit over the top is going to continue, and if the U.S. men's team is going to continue to decline, or there might be some changes there as well. So, the next thing, despite the fact that we had a couple of earthquakes, could feel some earthquakes here in Santa Barbara County, July 4 and 5, it seems like the biggest earthquake that I haven't necessarily addressed, but posted on my website at accessmediaglobal.com, was the Kawhi Leonard choice of the Los Angeles Clippers over LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the interesting thing is, I have to give Kawhi Leonard credit. He leveraged Paul George for the Clippers. Now, I'm happy that Kawhi Leonard chose the Clippers. If you listen to my last podcast, which you can get on the platforms I mentioned, or you can go to the website, you can go to the drop-down menu under episodes and listen to that 45-minute podcast when I talked about the Clippers. I also have posted my top 6 teams in the West and the East. As it stands now, I believe that Philadelphia did a great job in free agency. So, and all the other teams, but right after the earthquake of July 5, 11 o'clock Pacific time, late into the night, Kawhi Leonard decides he's going to play with the Clippers, but he leveraged the situation. He said, I need my friend Paul George to come and play. Now, the interesting thing with Paul George committed to the Oklahoma City Thunder and stayed with Russell Westbrook for an extra year before he finally got his wish to come to Los Angeles. So Kawhi is happy, and he got to choose his running mate, Paul George. I like the roster even though they had to give up Danilo Gallinari and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander went to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the only problem with that is Oklahoma leveraged this thing pretty well. They got 5 draft picks between now and 2026. Various round, first or second round picks, plus 2 pick swaps. So this is like the largest haul of draft picks for Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I have to say, if I'm Sam Presti, I leverage another guy out of there. Now, for some reason, nobody wants to stay in Oklahoma City and play basketball with Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook is now exploring with Sam Presti, general manager of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are exploring a trade, perhaps to the Miami Heat, perhaps to the Eastern Conference, maybe some middle-of-the-road team like a Detroit could use him. I don't have a problem with Russell Westbrook. I respect his game, but I do believe that he has difficulty playing with other people properly in the sandbox, if you know what I mean, on the court. So I look for a Russell Westbrook trade for the simple reason you look at the free agents that have left OKC. Kevin Durant for the Bay Area in Northern California, Golden State. You have James Harden, gone. You now have Paul George, gone in OKC. So OKC is living a small market life, and I can't say that that's a negative, because the way that things went down in Seattle, when the Seattle team was taken out from under the Seattle fan base and moved to OKC in a less than professional or great manner. You can get that information on SaveOurSonics.com. There's a whole documentary out there regarding the Sonics move and that historicity, and it's interesting to see how things come home to roost. So I would expect Russell Westbrook to be removed sooner or later. Miami, Detroit, and another team that actually got a couple of nice free agent acquisitions, the Orlando Magic. We'll talk about the Magic maybe at a later podcast. Look at their roster, look at their positioning in the Eastern Conference. They actually qualified for the playoffs this year, out after round one. And so if you want to go to accessmediaglobal.com, look at all the NBA stuff. You can also go to the NBA page. There's continual news feeds that are updated constantly. Even if I'm not necessarily doing a podcast or posting at that point, you can definitely look at that. Couple other things. Just want to say thank you for listening to the podcast. This is the From the Bench podcast for July 9th, 2019. I'm your host, Mark Janish. Thank you for listening. You're welcome to follow me on social media at Mark at Access Media Global. We're happy you're along, listening across the United States and around the world. Want to say thank you to everybody who's supported over the years. Appreciate it. Once again, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to the homepage. You can click on the icons, credit cards, debit cards, and PayPal. If you'd like to support the podcast, you're welcome to do so. So, this is going to wrap this up. We're going to be talking a lot more sports as we move toward July, when we're going to start talking some preseason football. I think I want to say the Dallas Cowboys are going to be in Oxnard, California, just down the 101 freeway off of Vineyard Avenue at River Ridge. Once again in July, we'll be following the Seattle Seahawks, the Los Angeles Chargers, who are up and coming with Derwin James, outstanding rookie year last year out of Florida State. Looking for the Chargers to do some things. We'll be following the Seattle Seahawks. And we will also be looking strongly at Sean McVay and the NFC champion Los Angeles Rams. Once again, of course, the Rams losing in a low-scoring Super Bowl to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, 13-3. So we're going to get into some preseason football as we have those. We're going to be bringing back the Around the League podcast probably within the next month, hosted by some NFL insiders. Want to bring that back for you this year, but definitely looking toward another great season out of Los Angeles, and we'll see what happens with the Seahawks as they transition from the Legion of Boom to just a Legion on defense. For now, I'm Mark Janish. This is the From the Bench podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll be posting this shortly on accessmediaglobal.com. Once again, you can listen to any other episode on the episode tab. Click on the player, the embed player there, and you'll be able to listen to any and all other podcasts from the bench. So for now, I'm Mark Janish from the bench. This is the From the Bench podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone, for July 9th, 2019. We'll talk to you later, everyone.